New computer and everything.
The Deep Dive presents the Fifth Year Option NFL Draft Podcast with Andy Molitor and Vegas Refund, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome. This is, of course, not Andy. I'm filling in for Andy on Fifth Year Option this week. Luke is filling in for Andy on the Deep Dive as we are doing the gimmick. I don't know, I'm sure you remember from back in the day, Luke. You remember when like NBC would do the gimmick and they would like cross over like ER and Friends or something stupid, and they were like, "Yeah, we got the crossover event that can't be missed." We are both filling in for Andy as he pursues his dream to become a professional putt-putt golfer. Best of luck to him in the beautiful shores of Myrtle Beach, I believe, South Carolina. But how you doing today, Luke?
Phenomenal. It's week out. You got some good stuff with DJ and Schrager this morning, which was great. First round props came out on FanDuel. It feels like we're pumping.
Yeah, it really does. And I got to say, the DJ and Schrager was eagerly anticipated because there's been sort of a vacuum of high level guys you have in sort of the Mount Rushmore of I want them to. I need their info. It's been a little bit quiet from them, I feel like, over this whole cycle. And now that they're showing up and they're saying a lot of things that are confirming my biases, I'm pretty happy. So enjoying that.
I was when he made the Levis comment, I was so happy.
Yeah, and honestly, in response to that, I think Levis is down at least at the place on the earth where you can get the most liquidity in any draft bet. He's gone, so I think that's correlated. You get the mute on by accident either way, but I guess I want to set up a little bit here where we stand and see if you agree with me. We are still waiting on concrete info for Houston at 2. I think we can kind of put to bed Bryce at 1, unless something absolutely ridiculous is going on there. That's a done deal. And so the draft starts at 2. And we say this every cycle, the draft starts at blank. And this year it feels even more important what Texas does at 2, because I have a lean on what I think they ultimately will do. But it's not very strong, and it's not informed by someone in the building saying they've already made up their mind. And I feel like there's a world where they come to their senses, they take a quarterback for themselves for the future, and that quarterback, I would guess, is Will Levis, because I've heard pretty reliable reports that he is their QB2 on their board. And I think that then creates a situation where the third pick is very, very valuable for someone to trade into, someone, namely the Tennessee Titans, to trade into so that they can get the third quarterback in Anthony Richardson before the Colts scoop him at 4. And I guess the setup for this in my mind is that everything we've heard is this idea of this being a 4 quarterback draft is shifting a little bit. And this may be a 3 quarterback draft. Is that crazy?
That is not crazy at all. I mean, everything hinges off of number 2. Like, really, I want to say, like, based off the top 4, like, the only like close certainty I have is that it's not Stroud
for 2.
Right.
Right. So give me a price on what Stroud to no ought to be, like minus 500, 800.
I would say 275. I mean,
okay,
that's tough. I mean, I would love for them to offer us nose.
Yeah.
But that blueprint you just went through, that has Stroud falling out of the top 4 for you.
Yeah. Unless the Colts just take it because they have no other choice. But in that world, the Colts get the stick, get the shaft, and I think that Ballard will not ever trade up out of in like the world of what are knowns, right? the seemingly known that Houston does not end up with Stroud, I think is pretty high likelihood. The seemingly known that Ballard won't trade up, I think is high likelihood. And so it kind of turned, that if the, Texans take Levis at 2, then I think it becomes a matter of, does Arizona find a trading partner? If yes, then Richardson 3. If no, then Richardson 4.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can buy that. Which,
yeah,
and all the Richardson unders are at plus money right now too. I just the Richardson unders are. I can't do it. I just I mean I totally get it. I just can't do it. Because I still as Levis going 2 would be the greatest outcome for myself, I think. But I still feel like it's Tyree where that kind of pushes everyone down. Which actually, no, it doesn't. Because basically Levis could go 2 or 4.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to get right.
Yeah. So basically, if you're speaking into existence the other world, which is the Texans are not BSing. They really are going to take a defensive player 2. And I'm going to take you on a wild ride after we go through this. But Texans take a defender 2. Then the Cardinals now have very little leverage to get a trade done. And they take a defender 3. And then Levis goes 4. Right. So based on this kind of these kind of 2 most likely worlds we live in, Levis goes 2 or Levis goes 4. Either way, his under I thought was kind of the highest DV bet of the week. I'm up to my gills on that anyway. So I hope it's right.
Can you and I do think the one thing that most people assume that you kind of just went against, which you brought this up to me, that kind of opened my eyes to it. But the value of number 3 being devalued if a defender goes second. Because I think everyone assumes that if Stroud is there, the 3rd pick is more valuable. But technically, in your eyes, it's not.
Right. I think the market for Stroud is pretty soft. Number 1, based on market for Stroud being soft. This isn't even. I have inside information on this. He was presumed to be the number 1 pick. He has done the least amount of visiting teams down the board, right? His whole team has really kind of keyed him in on guys, teams at the top. And if they don't take him, then you get an Aaron Rodgers situation where, Stroud may be there at 8, 9, 10, 11, but those teams have already decided we don't want a quarterback or we didn't really do our due diligence on him, so we're not going to take him. If those teams pass on him, then are we really going to risk it? And so I think, free fall is potentially in play. Now I have no idea if the Titans would take him at 11 as a backstop. That seems plausible. That seems plausible, right?
I mean, he's plausible. In Atlanta right now. The fact that he's going to the Falcons right now, to me kind of speaks that there's some last minute
that they know.
Yeah, it was yesterday because yesterday was the last day. He might be there. We should probably see him.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And so, there's a chance he slides out of the top 5. I think pretty high, pretty realistic likelihood. And I think that's so the idea of leverage of the 3 pick. Titans, if the Titans have 3 quarterbacks that they would accept, or 2 even, right? Maybe it's Young and Richardson only, right? And one of those guys is available at 3. Then they want to get ahead of the Colts because they know the Colts would take that guy, right? But if Levis and Richardson are there at 3, then the expectation is Colts go Levis. And then Richardson, potentially you can get him later. Maybe he slides to you at 11, or maybe you can do a cheaper deal to go up and get him at some point, right? Because there's a lot of teams kind of in the bottom half of the top 10 that are trying to trade down or at least exploring options, right? So, I think Cardinals lose a lot of leverage if the Texans take a defender. I don't know who the defender would be for the Texans. I don't think it is a slam dunk that it's Will Anderson. I think there's enough there's enough boards that have Wilson over Anderson that Wilson going 2, I think, is still very much in play if that's the path they go. I think we have high confidence from one of our good friends that Wilson's at the top of the defensive board for the Cardinals over Anderson, right?
Yep.
So Wilson going as first defender all of a sudden has real legs. The only, and this is again crazy, is the only path for Anderson to be the first defender now is if it goes quarterback, and then Seattle takes him 5.
Exactly. Pretty much.
It's wild.
Which is why, I mean, and the first defender odds have been coming down where I think it was like plus 300. Now it's, depending on where it is, it's like plus 170, plus 200, which to me, like there's still, I think that's still very bettable. Based on, and it seems like the foundation to the last 2 weeks with everything coming to fruition is Zerline's mock. That was once thought as being crazy, and it's a tweet reply extravaganza, but there are nuggets and you got to connect a few, and he definitely is loving all the attention. But he had Tyree too, which everything you see is Tyree over Anderson at 2. And like, if anything, I think they should just have the same. Like, there shouldn't be a favorite.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Okay, so let's go down a fun rabbit hole of the Texans taking a defender at 2, or even just the Texans not taking a QB at 2, right?
Yeah.
All of our smart friends in football space gives kind of, I'll use Suma as sort of the prototypical like guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all saying the same thing about the Texans coming out of this draft with a quarterback as being like a must, right? And yeah, you say it out loud, like it is absolutely insane to punt on an entire season and expect that you're going to have a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. And that's your plan. Like that's not ever a plan. It's not a plan, right? They're not going to trot Davis Mills out there and tell season ticket holders, hey guys, we're running it back with Davis Mills. Buy tickets. Like that's not happening, right? And so the idea of they got to come away with a quarterback, but they don't take one at 2 is tough for a lot of people to swallow. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. What are their options if they don't take a quarterback at 2? Well, surely one of them is wait and get Hooker at some point, right? Like you got a 12th pick. That's like kind of emergency, use in a break glass in case of emergency, and take Hooker if all the other quarterbacks go higher than you think. And you have to get one, right? They have the 33rd pick or something, 32nd pick, whatever it is, the first pick in the second round. Them
the Steelers have the first pick in the second round, I think, and then it's them.
Okay, so they got early second rounder they could use on Hooker if Hooker slides out of 1. Hooker is definitely an option for them, and we've heard decent buzz that they've worked him out. Like they've explored that option, right? Yep. But even that, like, God, man, you're really gonna go to your fans and say we got the quarterback of the future, Hendon Hooker, who's coming off an ACL and really just has zero juice.
And he can't even and Hooker can't even play this year. So like you might as well taking Hooker, who's off of an ACL that probably will sit out. Yeah, you're basically in the same spot where you might as well not even take him and just tank for Caleb than take him. Yeah, like you're gonna have the same amount of wins whether you have Hooker or not.
You're exactly right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct by that. You're the favorite for the number 1 pick if that's your strategy.
Correct. And yeah, I do think that like it's common knowledge that the Texans love Bryce. Like if Bryce was there, they would take him. And everyone thinks it's crazy that they didn't trade up to 1. But the fact that they didn't trade up to 1 to me kind of tells me like how bought in they are to taking a quarterback, which isn't a lot. Like if they were like basically not trading into 1 where Bryce is your guy, kind of tells me like QB, they might just punt. Because they didn't really want to trade up if they love him as much as we all think they do. Yeah. Like if I'm making a mock draft, like there's 2 mocks. You can make a mock with Bryce Levis, Bryce 2 defensive linemen, where I'm just doing Levis for the culture. And Stroud falls. Yeah. But if it's like 2 defensive linemen, God, I can't even do it in my head, but like 2 D linemen, Levis, AR5, Stroud falls. Like Stroud falls in both.
Stroud falls in both. Yeah. Yeah, we agree. Okay. So what's the other option for the Texans if it's not Hooker? It's staring us in the face, right? It's that they trade for a guy who's in a situation that he's not happy. Well, Trey Lance has been the buzz. He's been the buzz. But what if there's another target out there and there's a deal that's already been effectively made? And it takes a quarterback who's in a dicey situation but still has value.
Lamar?
Not Lamar either. Lamar's a tough one because now you got to give him a big old guaranteed contract.
I have absolutely no idea.
Mac Jones.
Oh, please. Yes.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing about Mac Jones. Okay. The relationship with Mac and Bill right now, would you describe it as toxic?
From what we have been told, yes.
Okay. The offensive coordinator for the Texans is a Shanahan disciple.
Correct.
They value the traits that we know had them locked in on Mac Jones when they traded up to 3 in the first place. You would agree?
Yeah. I mean, I love this. Like, yes. As a Patriots fan, I love this.
Okay. And I think this all kind of boils down to, what in the world happened with Mac Jones and the Patriots, right? Like, how did that go so pear-shaped so aggressively? And I got a little tidbit today that I haven't shared with you, and I want your opinion on this. So Patriots go get Mac Jones. At the time, the offense was the Josh McDaniels show. So presumably he was a McDaniels guy, not a Belichick guy, right?
Right.
Belichick signed off on it, but he wasn't going to tell McDaniels who he couldn't run his offense with, right? And then McDaniels walks out of the building, presumably because he realizes that Belichick favors Mayo as his successor, not him. And so he's now got to go sow his own oats. He's got to go to Vegas. Probably the worst. He didn't have any good options, but that was among the worst. And I don't think he makes that move unless he feels like he has to, right? And so then Belichick has an offensive vacuum. And for whatever reason, he installs Matt Patricia to solve that problem. Okay. Belichick's made a lot of weird decisions in his career. This is at the top of the list. Why in the world would you put Matt Patricia in charge here? It goes poorly as expected. And there's a story that in camp, before we even get to the regular season, Mac Jones is hitting the emergency button, calling Alabama and saying, "We need help. This isn't working. This isn't working. We need help." Of course, a lot of connections between Alabama and New England. Gets back to Belichick. Mac Jones is squarely in the doghouse now because he reached out to his alma mater for help on offense because the Patricia experience was not going as planned. Okay. So at this point, I mean, it wasn't over, I would imagine, between those two people, but it's definitely not easy to heal those wounds. And then nothing that happened last season made things better. Certainly benching him for Zappy. My God. Like that was such an aggressive decision. It was like Belichick has quit on this guy. Right. And then of course, later in the season, Mac starts getting vocal about the way the offense is being called. Patricia ultimately gets fired. I don't know how to make a market for this, but the idea that Mac Jones is going to take the field for Belichick this season, I think is starting to look a little bit low. and so if he's going anywhere,
it would make a lot of sense.
Nick Caserio, offensive coordinator that prized those traits in the draft a couple of years ago anyway. I think there's definitely a path that if the Texans have already decided, hey, we lost out on Bryce Young, we don't love any of these other guys, I think their plan B might be, let's go make a deal for Jones.
would you say? I mean, that blew my mind. But would you say Trey Lance or Mac Jones has a better chance to be traded to the Texans?
Mac Jones.
It makes total sense. I want to know who he's like. What help is he? When he's calling to like ask for help, like what help is he trying to get? Like,
yeah.
Who's gonna come?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's a good
that's
question.
Wild. It makes. I mean, you connect the dots. It makes total sense. Which that would put D-line at number 2 squarely in play.
Yeah, it would also put that pick being made by the Patriots in play.
The Pats would have to give up picks too.
14 goes to the Texans.
Right.
Mac Jones goes to the Texans. Patriots pick number 2.
Yeah. I mean, and then the Pats, and who the hell would the Pats take? Oh my God.
I don't know. Have they had any meetings or interviews with anyone recently?
I thought I saw one with Stroud. I'm not sure. No.
Let's go look at, let's check, let's see if there was somebody that had a report. Oh, it was Ian Rappaport. Pats worked out Will Levis.
Oh, there we go. It works for everyone.
What in the world? Like, oh, okay. So I'm being a little, having a little fun here, just because I don't really understand what's going to happen. Ultimately, Will Levis going to the Texans at 2 is not crazy. If the Pats, evaluate Levis as a quarterback they would go to war with, I would expect the Texans, who have similar, just evaluation parameters, would see the same. And just in general, I think Texans could just kind of chill out and just decide, hey, we're just going to take our QB2, and that's the plan, because that's an easy thing to sell to your fans. And that would be Levis, in my opinion. So, yeah, we come off a long way to say the most, I would say like 40% chance in my mind that it goes Bryce, Levis, question mark, and then a question mark, and then it goes 40% chance it goes Bryce, Levis, AR, question mark, or defense, AR, right?
Right.
So basically, entirely depending on whether or not the Cardinals trade. Okay. Cardinals make a deal, it's AR3. Cardinals don't make a deal, it's Wilson 3.
The only thing I'm not on with is it would be insane. Like the AR to the Colts just never has made sense to me. Or if it's like AR and Stroud, like it's just insane to me that the Colts would go AR, who's not ready to start day one, and just roll with Gardner Minshew. Or like there's specific team, like the AR teams are like the teams who have the bridge quarterback, Jimmy. There's like
Seattle,
4 or 5,
Detroit.
like Tannehill.
Yeah, Seattle, Detroit, Tennessee. Yeah,
which is like
completely
Colts
agree.
are not one of them, which is why Levis and Stroud, to me, were Texans, Colts, and then the other teams should probably be favored for AR. Or like Titans trading up for one of those two.
Okay. Reports that Stroud's interview with the Colts was a catastrophe.
Right.
You would hold those as smoke, or
no?
or
I
real?
forgot about that. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, maybe the catastrophe, which he's just totally like it's just crazy, and it wasn't too far long ago that we were all like convinced he was going 1, and
it was minus 400. Yeah,
which it's insane. But I think, and then I think when we had Staten on last week,
yeah,
like let's say AR gets to 5,
yeah,
like he was clear about AR over Tyree, Anderson over AR. So for whatever reason, Anderson goes 2 or 3, and then Levis. Based off of that scenario, they would go AR at 5.
I love the interview that you guys did with him, by the way. You got so many useful nuggets out. But the one that really, really stuck with me is his story about Seattle was high on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And didn't move on from Russell Wilson in time to go get Josh Allen, and they had regrets. I mean, if there's not a more similar kind of raw talent and guy who loves football and will work to kind of make up for his deficiencies, AR is that guy in this draft, from what I can tell you. And so fitting with Seattle, it seems like there's been so little smoke and so little just like they have kept their cards very close to the chest, if that's the case. But in the blind, it makes so much sense that if he is there at 5, I would expect you get the shot of the draft room and it's just 10 men just giddy, like I can't believe this happened. I think that's very realistic, and maybe the only thing that changes that is if Anderson is available. Do you get why Anderson is, in general, it feels like sliding a bit in the minds of a lot of the evaluators?
You see what I read and like what you see in the last week, I guess it's about his like bend.
Sure.
And basically Tyree is like this. The ceiling is way higher on Tyree than Anderson. Like Anderson is just going to be a solid starter, like the highest floor, lower ceiling. When you draft this high, you want to go for the ceiling, I guess you could say, where Tyree has all the bend. He's more of a freak than Anderson, essentially.
Yeah. So if only there was some recent history to tell us that that's something that teams would do with a high pick. Like taking Trayvon Walker over Hutchinson. Like, oh my gosh, we just lived through this. Okay. Yeah. Surprise. All right. Okay. All right. I think that's a fair sort of setting the table for the draft. And that's kind of the intrigue that I'm the most excited to get an answer on, is what are Texans going to do at 2? And realistically, I think, we're going to, I'm assuming we're going to hear before the market goes pear-shaped on that. And we're going to be able to click away on something once we know which of these kind of realities we are living in, right? Because you don't get the sense that anyone is really staking their flag that sincerely on one thing or the other with the Texans at 2, right? It's kind of 50-50 market-wide.
Yeah. Yeah, like really the only thing that it's just not going to be Stroud is the only staking, where the other one, pivoting off of Staten, was Schrager and Jeremiah just did their podcast, which I blazed through at 2X.
Have to. Yeah.
And one of Jeremiah's comments was basically, he's quote unquote, he was hearing that the Seahawks will not be taking Jalen Carter. And he actually referenced McDowell, which Staten got into. And yes. I mean, I've always had interest in the Carter under, but I have never taken action because of Staten. And before last week, I was starting to pull away from Staten's take on it, but then he just sucked me right back in.
Yeah.
And in which, like, Jeremiah saying it is like basically the nail in the coffin, at least for me.
Yeah.
Which at his 6.5 over under, it's Lions or bust for him, which I do think is definitely in play. I don't think corner is a lock whatsoever. And we saw the odds on DraftKings adjust, which I think people just stopped checking because it was a corner at like minus 250. And then all of a sudden, a couple days ago, all of a sudden, D-line's minus 105 and corners plus like even odds, which could be Jalen Carter. But like removing Carter from 5 conversation, theoretically, I guess clears up the rest of the top 10, where Jalen could slide to could slide to 9 at this point. I mean, that podcast was great. If you're listening, you haven't listened to the Schrager Jeremiah pod, it was awesome. Like most nuggets.
When you shared that nugget, I went out and sought out that portion, and the way he was talking about it sounded like he either reads Rob's blog or listened to the podcast
right.
you did with him last week, because it was like all of those reasons very clearly thought out. And honestly, when I went into listening to that interview you did with Rob last week, I was at probably like 90-10. They won't take him because of reading his work. And then when he said it out loud, it was like, oh, this is 0-100. Like, he is not 100%. A Seahawk, period. Like, there's if there was one thing that was kind of common expectation market wide that would absolutely blow me out of the water at this point, it would be the Seahawks actually walking up and putting in the card for Carter at 5.
Same.
Just don't think that's really in the board, in the realm of possibility. All right. So is there any way to really make any bets or any money right this moment, knowing what we know about how the, kind of the shape of the top of the board is going to play out? Like anything, because again, like, this, like, there's 2 ways to make money in the NFL draft. You're either swinging away at the insane stuff that sounds insane, but ultimately actually has real legs, or you're laying enormous prices on stuff that is priced like 80% when it's actually 99.9%. Like O lineman over 4.5 or five, over 4.5 O lineman. Is that the number still, or is it 5.5? Over 5.5.
Corners
was
4.5.
Was 4.5. Yeah. Like those overs to me seem like they should be in the minus 900 range, and they're in like the minus 250 range. And yeah, you're locking up capital for a week, and crazier things have happened. But to me, like, you either go that route and just hit the likely stuff that's not quite priced as certain when it should be, or you swing away at the insane stuff, because we don't really know right now. What do you see at the top of the board that has betting value? Anything?
I think Tyree, first defensive player, where you kind of want to, like, the ripple effect of, like, you kind of want to take a stance on if you think Levis or defensive lineman to go in second and bet off of the ripple effect. But it had like probably like taking shots at Stroud on the pick, which I think books stopped offering him at like pick 6, or they just took him off the board at like 7 and 8. Like FanDuel doesn't have him up for 7 or 8, I don't think, which they will. But yeah, I mean, everything has been blood dry. And it is the uncertainty where it's nice, because this time last year it would be minus 500s everywhere. But since there is an uncertainty, we still have like the plus 200s that at one point they were 20 to 1. But plus 200 is better. Plus 200 is better than minus 500, which might not be value now, but tomorrow it very well could be, because it could be minus 500. But like in terms of like there are a couple over-unders I'm eyeing that I'm waiting to move. And really this morning was like fire. Like that podcast, like just to go over some of the points that they wanted to add.
Hit it.
Jalen not going to the Seahawks.
Yeah.
The key point of the whole thing was Jeremiah saying that and all of this is like in the context of from what he's hearing, is that the Colts view Levis over Stroud and AR. Mm-hmm. And one of the others was Schrager made a comment about when he put his mock draft out a couple days ago, which this is exactly why he does it the way he does. He got multiple texts from teams saying that he was crazy putting Zay to the Giants over Quentin, and that his wide receiver order was totally out of whack, which everyone has Quentin falling out of the first. And Zay has kind of been that Twitter darling. It seems like every expert loves Zay, and everyone has his first wide receiver take an odds bet. And the last one, there's a couple. And then Bergeron, the tackle out of Syracuse, Jeremiah put him in the first, which in the context, there's like two sides of this. He put him in the first because all the tackles were off the board at that point. And I do think he kind of wanted to just bring attention to him, kind of like he has in the past with like Tyree. But he said he knows teams that are in love with this dude with all the other tackles. He's basically a sleeper that he can see going in the first, which I think his Bergeron's odds got absolutely smoked first round on Canby. They didn't have Zay in the first. They didn't have a few consensus guys in the first. And then the guy to Northwestern, Adabuke, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. DJ said he was going to have to the Chiefs in his mock next week, which he's only doing one more, which is a pain in the ass. I replied in his Twitter or his Reddit Q&A. I asked a question. I put like stars on both sides of it so that he would catch it, kind of like when you throw your number in the bin and you crinkle it up, hoping that they feel it. And you replied, and it wasn't until Wednesday. I think I had 3 questions and you only got that one. But
yeah, I mean, the sentiment about the O lineman is why I would say, like, if you can only have one high likelihood bet on the board, what is it right now? Over 5.5 O lineman. To me, like 6 is the floor.
It reminds you of that Notre Dame bet we had a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's that much of a lock.
That was bananas. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. That was so mispriced, it was impossible.
And that was the first year I really think they started offering draft props, so they didn't have a clue. And then the last one I forgot, just so I don't forget. Jeremiah like casually dropping that he's heard the Bears have interest in Bijan, which I don't buy that one, especially if Jalen's falling. but that was definitely one of note.
I would say the Bears have executed lying season very well. Last
Very
year, the Giants executed lying season the best. I will never trust a Giants report I ever hear ever again until like something comes true. But there was stuff floating around like that they had this disastrous dinner with Kayvon Thibodeau, and ultimately it may have depressed his value from going too. Like it might have worked to where he fell to them at 4 and they took him. I think they were behind circulating all the rumors about Evan Neal's injury status and that he wasn't going to be able to go. And then they took him 7th. Like, they really did the lying thing. They did it dirty, but I think they executed it well. And like you said about Bijan to the Bears, like, I'm struggling to find a player who's going to be drafted in the top 20 who at some point hasn't been connected to the Bears. Like hearing buzz that they like blank. Like it's been so many players that they're obviously telling everybody somebody different.
And Bijan's connected to like every team at this point as well. So it's like no one has any clue. Like you hear like Commanders have been the favorite, and then it might have been Standig. I forget, somewhere said like the Commanders are out on Bijan.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the Eagles are the trendy spot. Then you see all the beat writers saying he's not an option. And then Jeremiah put Bijan to the Eagles, which is notable, not as notable than his Jets pick because he used to be in the front office of the Eagles. And then with the Jets, and this is like moving the sticks, his pod, I want to say 2 days ago. And then on the pod with Schrager, he did his pick for the Jets or his recommendation. Both times, it really feels like he's making like a strong stance on D-line at 13, which out of like the 40 mocks I track, 95% of them have them taking offensive line. It's the highest consensus, which he's taken O-line both times this year.
Both
he mocks, but like he just keeps he didn't do D-line. Actually, his last mock he did D-line. He did Nolan Smith, but he just is like harping D-line. Which is like notable. I don't think it's actionable. Maybe if you want to do like Jets position to draft first, but everyone is just assuming they're going offensive line. And if someone like Nolan is there, or I don't know, Van Ness, I don't think it's out of the realm of like craziness that it could be possible. Broderick feels like he's falling a little bit, and then Darnell feels like he's rising. And then like the 3 guys, which I think everyone in this Discord destroyed, that are definitely feeling like locks to be the first rounder: Manuel Forbes, Anton Harris, and then who's the third one? Will McDonald, which I would probably rank Anton, Forbes, McDonald in terms of like likelihood.
Yeah.
But I think all 3 of those opened up at like plus money in terms of first round odds on FanDuel this morning. And all 3 of them are out to like minus 200, minus 300. I think Forbes is like Anton is like minus 500.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm seeing a screenshot with Anton at plus 105 to go in the first round. Can I still bet that? No? Oh, he's minus 500 now. Oh. Oops.
Yeah, he's minus 500, which I think that has to do with our friends over at 4for4 as well.
Okay.
Gave him out.
Okay, so I want to thank you for the kind of update on sort of the overall macro. I always appreciate when you guys get to that on the 5th year, and I don't have any strong disagreement or contention with any of that. But I want to go back to up higher and get your take on this. So Wilson top 5, Patrick says, is plus 100 on DK. Okay. At face value, I want to, because I gravitate towards the less uncertain, which is the top for the over-unders. And that's stupid. I know. Like, I don't need a lecture on, I shouldn't be looking at the top because it's well priced, blah, 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 blah. But like the Will Anderson at 3.5 is plus money over. The Tyree Wilson is currently in like the 6.5 range at most places.
Yeah.
Let me get that right. 5.5 now. Ooh, okay. So this keeps getting bet down. So Tyree Wilson is at 5.5. It's juicy to the under. And I agree with you that the big, if you want to get a decent if you want to swing on something we've heard at the top, you probably take Wilson first defense at a plus 200 or better price and just be fine with that. But I can't get as much down on that at all as I could on over 3.5 for Anderson or under 5.5 on Wilson, because you can multi-click those for 500 a pop on Bookmaker. So a general opinion on Wilson's floor, right? And general opinion on Anderson over under 3.5 at plus money. Over 3.5 at plus money. And I guess let's start with Wilson, because we talked about Anderson a good amount. I know what my risk is there. Like, yeah, I get it. He could go 2 to the Texans. Sure. I get it. He could go 3 to the Cardinals, assuming Wilson goes 2. But what is Wilson's floor if we do have a run of quarterbacks at the top?
So Wilson's floor is probably Falcons, I would say. Like, I don't think he gets past 8, but at the same time, you believe that he's either going to go 2. So if he doesn't go 2 and the Cardinals trade out, that trade is probably for a QB, and the Colts go QB, and then we have the Seahawks, which Staten thinks that the Seahawks would go AR over Tyree.
And Anderson too, right? Like, and I get that, because like Anderson's a tryhard. Like, he's much more in the effort mold that Carroll would prize, right? So Anderson goes over Tyree if they're both on the board at 5, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So then at that point, under 5.5 is a loser. So laying that price.
Basically, yeah, you're under 5.5. You're betting that the Texans take him at 2. You either need 2 D linemen to go on the top at 2 or 3 with no trade, or you need the Texans to take him over Anderson at 2.
Okay. So basically the same. So Wilson under 5.5. Oh, excuse me. Wilson over 5.5 should be basically the same price as first 4 picks QB, or first 3.
Yes.
First 3 picks QB.
Yeah.
Because Okay.
Good math.
Okay. So it's probably not a good. It's probably a bet to the under, but not a good enough bet to really go ham at minus 159 now. Yeah. Same for Wilson. Although Wilson over 3.5 has gotten nibbled on now a couple times. It was plus 109 when we started. It keeps getting nibbled. Anderson's over keeps getting nibbled, and it's not.
Yeah, that's
not me.
one. I would. Yeah, I mean, I bet that when it opened like months ago, and I haven't hedged. Where if you think Tyree's going 2, like that over in a trade is very likely. Like, no one's trading up for Anderson.
No.
So, I mean,
yeah,
we believe that the Cardinals are going to trade out. Where they trade out, like, the over is going to hit either way.
Yeah. Yeah. To Ben's question, Bryce Levis as a 1-2. In my opinion, the likelihood that Anderson goes 3 in that scenario is like close to 0, because we've been told by someone who would know that the Cardinals have Wilson over Anderson on their board. And so if they're stuck with that pick, it's Wilson. And if they trade that pick, it's a quarterback. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. The circle back on another thing you mentioned about Zay Flowers. So did you read the guy from Dallas? I forget his name. Rick something. The guy from Dallas who did like the whole expose on wide receivers and tight ends, and he had all these anonymous scouts who were quoting about Zay Flowers. You sent me this actually. Yeah.
Miguel.
Miguel. Thank you. Yeah. You sent me that.
It was a tough saying.
It was, and actually everything in there, like you read that stuff that scouts say, that doesn't seem like smoke to me, right? Because like I think maybe and you might besides the just absurdly stupid prices like over 1.5 Notre Dame players when 2 are going in the top 10 in round 1. Aside from those, the best bets that I've made in the draft have been overs on guys that have like sincere character or injury concerns that you don't find out about until the week of. And that felt like one of those. Am I crazy?
So character with Zay?
Yeah.
I don't think Zay's character is in question at all.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think Zay's character is like rock solid. Like he hasn't had any team meetings.
Okay.
Which which Albert Breer quoted that him not having any meetings because he checks all the boxes. No one has questions.
Okay.
But that McGill piece was more about him being small, and with his size, he's not explosive enough or like a playmaker to offset his size.
Yeah.
It said he doesn't play like a big receiver, which a lot of it I was reading was like really like basically shitting on his physical traits, and a lot of it I didn't agree with.
Okay.
But at the same time, like what I think doesn't matter. But yeah, I need to read it. I don't remember seeing characters.
There was a bunch of weird stuff about how he has like 13 siblings and like people are worried about the influence of his family.
I think that was Kincaid.
Oh, that was Kincaid? Oh.
It was Kincaid, or I think that was one of the tight ends.
Oh, okay.
I think that was I think so. I mean,
all right.
I'm reading so much stuff, which like Kincaid and Mayer are like, because those odds got blown up because of ETR kind of in Zerline on that podcast. And Zerline dropped a nugget about Kincaid falling, which both tight ends opened up at 21.5, and quickly Kincaid went to 24.5, like in a blank, which I have to wonder, like, I wonder if it wasn't for that ETR podcast, which was the night before it came out, would the Kincaid number have like ballooned up? And then Bet Online came out with them both, which it's $50 limits. No one can bet into it really, but it's like a good frame of reference. And Mayer's at like 24.5 and Kincaid's at 26.5, which 26.5 is high. Like Bengals are a prime spot for a tight end.
Okay.
And I think, I need to read those pieces. I think it was like Kincaid has all these siblings, but he's in a foster home or something.
Okay. Okay. All right. So have you heard any buzz about teams with red flags for injuries on players?
You heard about, so Kincaid has the red flags, and then you hear there's something I saw today about Darnell Wright having like a red flag. I don't know if it was health or what, but like, which I did not like. Like I wanted to shut that guy's Twitter down for just like having any thoughts on that. Cam Smith is falling, which I think that's pretty known. There's a couple other guys that, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has had 2 practices with 2 wide receivers in this class the last 2 days. So everyone wants to say the Chiefs are going to take him, which I think the exact same thing happened last year.
Of course. They took Sky Moore, right?
Sky Moore. There's no, which, and it's interesting because like you always hear about like the risers and the fallers around this time.
Yeah.
And there's like 2 types. There's the risers and the fallers that in general are like, this is the common case where we were just wrong about them. It's not like these teams are all of a sudden like finding out about these players and bringing them all the way up to their boards. Like we were just wrong. The mock drafts have been wrong. And then whatever's coming out, we're realizing that teams are higher on them, which this is the time that you want to really start paying attention to like the guys that you might hear teams are higher on this player than the media or lower on this player than the media.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the guys like the Jeremy Tunstals where character issues come out. And I think Devontae Wyatt was a good example. I don't know how late that was last year, but like they come out and they're real. And when you get this close, I guess it's just leaking. Teams have known, and those guys just fall right out of the first round, which I don't think I know of any right now.
It's been huge. maybe we just haven't gotten to that part yet. We'll get there.
Like the closer those flags come out, like the more I believe it and the more drastic of a like opinion I think I'll have on it.
Oh, 100%. Okay. Mike Durso gets to a question that I was saving for the end for you. Mostly just because we don't have an answer, right? But we can speculate. I don't mind speculating. Good info friend, by the way, Mike Durso. Hat tip to you. What was up with the Paris Johnson's team? Because it was violent yesterday, and it was professional, from what I can tell you. This was not a somebody read a mock draft or released it on an ETR or 444 Discord or something. This looked like somebody had something, and I have yet to put a finger on who ultimately is so strongly tied to Paris Johnson Jr. My speculation, based on who is in the market for offensive tackles, is we're talking about picks 7 with the Raiders, pick 9 with the Bears, 10 with the Eagles, 11 with the Titans. That kind of is the range where I would expect the first 2, maybe 3 tackles to come off the board. No one's smashing an under button based on Bears info because they're lying to everyone, and they want everyone, and they want everything, and they might not even make the 9th pick. Right? You agree with that?
Agree.
No one's really been able to pinpoint who the Eagles want. We expect it's going to be a tackle, but a lot of people think they still go D-line, and they're in a position where they can truly take best player available. And that might be cornerback, might be D-line, might be a tackle. Who knows? Probably going to be a tackle, but not strong. So I think we can rule out 9 and 10. Titans are at 11. We know they are very much in the mix still to take a quarterback. So tackle seems weak to really stake your entire bankroll on. So it's got to be the Raiders, right?
Yeah, which, like, honestly, when I first saw it, which I was like, it was one of the more, like, you can kind of see when they're about to pop. And this was just so random. And at first I thought it was like an ETR dropping it in their Discord. But then you realize it's not. And it brings me back to Charlie Campbell having Paris Johnson to the Raiders for months now.
Yeah.
Who Charlie Campbell's probably, if there's a Mount Rushmore of mock drafters, he's on it.
He's at least on the top 10 of the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, which he has. And Walter, there's like a tweet storm Walter had of, like, basically, I don't know how they're connected. Like, I literally have zero idea. But they have been in the past, and he went through like 3 or 4 like tweets of, like, basically saying that they were right on the last 4 picks, which is like the Mayock years. But they're saying that Paris is based off of sources at 7, which you would assume I'm assuming they're not lying. They have a source person still there. And honestly, like, I don't think it's Walter and Charlie destroying these odds, but like, that's the only, like, connection that I can make of it, like, being true, because
they're not taking that ad rev and putting it right back into FanDuel accounts.
They make a lot of ad rev right now. But I mean, you've seen a few, like, Falcons offensive line, which I've always thought that the Falcons were somewhat of a really dark horse for O-line.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, your only spot that in Paris to the Bears is like the most mocked pick in the top 10 probably right now, other than Witherspoon. But like, the Raiders would be the only logical one, because I was looking at that over, and the only reason I didn't take the over was because of the steam, and you can't not respect it. And then because I already have Skoronski, so why don't I just bet the matchup?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's the only connection I can make to a Paris under.
Okay. And it's also not implausible that Vegas would be a pretty leaky ship. Big old turnover in the front office. A lot of guys who may be like, I might not be here next year, so might as well make a little money on this. The information.
Hell yes.
That all checks out. So I think if you're putting Paris Johnson in a mock draft and you want kind of a high likelihood place to put him right now, I'd put him 7. I think there's enough smoke there that I think that's real.
And it came in, and it was like, it went to 9.5, which the lower you get, the harder it is to move, which 10.5 is kind of a dead number, because Paris to the Eagles is somewhat, like, unlikely, you could say, where the difference between 10.5 and 9.5 really isn't a lot. Like, it's always been the Bears. There's always been like a pick of cushion for Paris on his over under. And then the under kept getting hit. And then now it's back to the over, which is probably people not realizing and seeing mock drafts. But Jeremiah's low on him. Like, if you do the comparison between, like, he has one of the largest discrepancy between, like, his ranking on the big boards between Jeremiah, McShay, and Brugler
Yeah.
to like the consensus,
Yeah.
which he's in like, I think 18 range.
Yeah.
And the consensus is like top 10. So there's a huge discrepancy between the two, but
Yeah.
the class isn't elite.
The to answer Regan Montgomery asks is a key question, and I thought about this too. If we're saying this is the most likely, why wouldn't and if you were trying to make money on this information, why wouldn't you just go hit PJJ at a big old number for 7th overall? And that's a very, very valid question. I think the answer is whoever has this information also knows that the Raiders are probably in talks to trade down from 7. Right? Like, and who would be a realistic trade partner? Probably the Titans coming up to get a quarterback. Raiders go down to 11. You can sit here and click away on under 10 for Paris Johnson at a juicy price. You could get $100,000 on that if you wanted. If you were sicko. But it's not being bet. So I think the way it was kind of hit to me seems like somebody who thinks the Raiders are taking him and it's going to be in the top 11, but we're not sure where. That was kind of the read I got. Does that check out?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fair. It's
Okay.
definitely fair. Which like 7 and 8 definitely feel like prime spots for the Titans or the Texans to trade back in if they do. Or like the guys that you like are seeing the Falcons and Raiders taking at 7 and 8. It is very likely that those same guys would be available at 11 and 12.
Yeah.
So if you just do a quick swap, get a couple of picks and take the same guy that you were going to in the first place, if the QB's falling or someone that this team wants, like usually probably a QB or where like Nolan and Christian Gonzalez are like the trendy picks for the Raiders and Falcons, and one of those two will definitely be there, you would assume, at 11 or 12.
Yeah, I guess strongly agreed. Speaking of Gonzalez, decent info that there's a team in, and again, speaking of Gonzalez and speaking of leaky teams, or at least teams that telegraph, if there is a team in the NFL draft over the last 4 years that you think telegraphs their pick the most clearly, would you say it is the Steelers? Doesn't have to be player, but just position and then second player. Is it the Steelers?
Yeah, he's like the
most
Tomlin,
open book.
Yeah, like 100%.
And they are apparently making calls about trading up. They need help on the offensive line. People kind of assume that's what they're going to go with. And maybe that's what they end up taking if they're stuck where they are now. But apparently they have eyes for Gonzalez, and they're trying to get into a range where he would be their choice. Which
would be 8-9.
8-9, okay.
You would assume.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if reports are coming out that that's what Tomlin wants to do, I would like based off of history, it's accurate.
Yeah.
And the tea leaves aren't as clear on what the Steelers are doing at their pick up until today. Like really, like usually you can do it off of visits, etc. And we really don't know, which not knowing what Tomlin doing around this time based off history is not common, which kind of implies that a trade might be more likely because that might be the plan.
Yeah. If it's up into the range where Gonzalez is available, it has to be 9 probably. And that's Bears.
Yeah.
Bears and Steelers obviously have already made a deal in current regimes. So that helps grease the wheels. Yeah. How about Bears get their second round pick back for pulling that swap off and going down to 17 and giving the that's really not crazy. That works. So the Bears trading down seems possible. Do you think if Jalen Carter is available at 9, do they take Carter at 9, or do they pull the trigger and get their second round pick back?
I would say they take Jalen.
Oh, wow. Okay. You think that connection is strong enough? They need blue chip players. They're going to take a guy even with that stuff swirling around them. They need talent.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen believes he's going the top 10. Like, clearly, he might have gotten promises, etc., which I think would be insane if they didn't take Jalen at 9. Like, I don't think he should fall. Like, but I mean, we're talking about a guy that traded a second round pick for Claypool. So, yeah, I mean, maybe.
Okay. So we can assume maybe Bears and Steelers have a soft agreement in place. If Carter's available, we're taking him. If the guy we want is not available, we'll trade the pick to you for this comp. Like that discussion's already happened.
Yeah, and that's actually intertwined too, because if Jalen's not available, that means someone took him, which means Gonzalez got pushed up, which would be that he would probably be there.
Yeah.
Which if Carter is available, you can assume that Gonzalez got taken, and the trade would be off. So that those scenarios definitely are correlated.
Okay. You got a sense of where Witherspoon ends if the Lions do something weird?
I really think the Lions are like, because the teams you like hear about the trade interest and so likely, like when all the trades are talked about, they never happen. And then when no one's talking about them, they always happen.
Yes. And
out of all the teams that really isn't getting a lot of attention, that have all the ammunition to do it, whether it's up, you would assume up, are the Lions, who have a bridge quarterback, depending on who you ask, where I think the Lions are a prime spot for a trade. That is like a sharp spot that no one is talking about, but I think it can generally be assumed that it's Witherspoon if they don't. Like, I would say like 70-30, like 70 Witherspoon, 30 Jalen.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Ooh. Yeah, I
maybe 60-40. 60-40.
I have always been much softer on Witherspoon's going to the Lions at 6 than just in general the sentiment. You know, there's been a lot of like, oh, done deal, this is it, and he's got the Surtain to the Cowboys with, you know, it's a little too common across the mocks that's going to be it, and
it does feel like he's started to lose like traction to that pick within the last week.
Yeah,
where like Surtain consensus was probably the greatest consensus ever, but I mean, maybe Jalen goes 6, or they trade out. Where Witherspoon is totally, which it all was based off of the trade, which they had an offseason strong enough at that position that you could argue that they don't have to.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Gonzalez could go ahead of Witherspoon too, which Gonzalez was like, everyone was hating him. And then within the last like week or so, like he's like, the standard deviation is like a lock at like 7 or 8. Then today he started to fall, but you're right. Like if you asked me that question last week, I probably would have said 70-30. And as of today, I'll backtrack and say 60-40.
60-40. Okay. I like that. Let's end with some fun stuff and call it a pod. This was extremely fun. Hopefully opened your mind to Mac Jones. Wearing the horns this year. You going to start watching Levis tape, preparing him for his Patriots career? Do you think he's got the goods? Do you want to watch Levis tape?
Someone asked me that question before we got on, like a buddy texted.
Yeah.
He's like, how would you feel about Levis? And my response is like, anyone but Mac. And I know Mac's gotten dealt a bad card and like, but at the same, like he could have, I'm not saying he sucks. He just needs a new start, I think is what he needs.
Yes. Yeah. Do you think anyone is in the market for Lance, or do you think that is entirely Niners just trying to drum up some interest because they have, because, Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy are apparently man crushed to the death.
Yeah. I honestly have no idea. Like, I literally have no idea on that one. Like, you got me to believe more. Like, if I asked myself the question whether Mac or Trey would be more likely to be traded before we talked, I would have said, like, Trey in a landslide. But now I'm, like, totally rattled. But at least we have 2 options.
Yeah, I think, and I think a lot of teams, don't know how likely a draft day trade is unless they've already kind of decided, which could be with like Patriots and the Texans have so many such a common. It's such a Venn diagram of player and personnel people that they could already have something worked out, and it wouldn't shock me. But any other kind of draft, like big time draft day trades, I think are pretty unlikely this year. I know we had AJ Brown get shipped last year. That felt a little unique. I don't think there's really anyone like that who's not going to get the deal he wants and is going to get shipped for picks. Like it just doesn't really feel like that this year.
And if Cesario is actually on the schneid, and the rumors are true about him going back to the Patriots, and he makes a swap, the Patriots trapped in the quarterback that he wants, if he loves Levis. So if the Texans get Mac, and when he goes back, he has the guy that he wanted it all along.
That'd be wild. That would be wild.
Really
yeah, some former Niners staffers get the quarterback they always wanted in Mac. It's just crazy how things are starting to get real incesty with teams and coaches and GMs, considering, there's only been a few teams to be successful and now everybody's poached everybody. But anyway, Lance, I think, is a lot of teams plan C, like Colts, like if all of the shit goes against the Colts in every which way and they're like stuck with every bad decision and they don't have a quarterback for week 1, I could see them doing something like, okay, fine, we'll trade you our 2024 second for Lance, and this is Lance's fresh start. Right. So yeah, I think realistically, we're not going to see Lance moved until after the draft. I don't know what to make of the Lamar situation currently. I don't think we're going to get any resolution of that on draft day. And then I think but surely for me, at least, the most fun thing that could happen would be a CJ Stroud slide.
Great, 100%.
just for content's sake, right? Like, number one, the idea that he could be there at 9 when the Panthers traded up from 9 to 1 to get him would just be amazing. Like, just hilarious.
That
right?
would be
absolutely hilarious. And then even better than that, and this is maybe the funnest thing that could happen. Everybody's like, oh yeah, over 4.5 quarterbacks. Like, somebody's going to trade into the end of the first round to draft a quarterback. A 5th-year option. Name of the show. It's always like, don't ever bet on that. Like, assumption. Great. Like, it's crazy. But the idea of all these people having over 4.5 quarterbacks in hand, and then seeing like it doesn't hit because CJ Stroud slides all the way out of round 1. because honestly, like, this is like, you may say that's insane, but like, once he gets past the Falcons at 8, Titans at 11.
I mean, there's literally zero shot he falls into the first, but it is like definitely a free fall.
Yeah,
like,
he didn't go to the Manning camp. He didn't kiss the rings. That matters, right?
Royalty.
No, that doesn't matter. That doesn't. That was a great story, though. All right, probably just a story. Is Dan pulling our leg, or did the Eagles actually hire Matt Patricia? Is that breaking news?
I think they actually might have.
Oh no! Oh goodness gracious!
I think it was like a consulting gig again.
Whew, special defensive assistant. Oh boy, not sure how that guy gets work, but that's fine. Patrick is probably right. Bucks is probably a fair backstop. A la Packers taking Aaron Rodgers at 24 or whatever. Bucks taking CJ is probably as low as he goes. However, if some team lucks into Stroud after top 10, then Hooker going in round 1 all of a sudden is a lot less likely.
Exactly.
So, all right. Any final thoughts?
No, we're good. This was fun.
All right, man. Best of luck on all your draft props. I hope you get the information to market before the number becomes unbettable. And then, let's have a fun week. 1 week left.
Oh God.